I wanted a place for people to receive authentic guidance and practical ways to awaken. Thought-provoking, paradigm-shifting, and empowering. This is about expanding our human consciousness to create a wave of new possibilities. I'm Dr. Theresa Bullard-Whyke, and this is Quantum Minds TV. Welcome back to Quantum Minds TV, where we discuss and take a deep dive into various perspectives on what it's going to take to create a shift in human consciousness. Now, today we are continuing the conversation with Erich von Däniken, author of the best-selling book, Chariots of the Gods, among 40 other books. And he is truly a pioneer that has brought forward this realization that aliens have definitely visited Earth and interacted with humans. So I'm really excited to continue the conversation now with you, Erich. The leap that people often have a hard time making is not that there's possibly extraterrestrial life out there somewhere, but the leap that some people really are challenged by is the idea that these beings may have been able to visit Earth and interact with humans, whether in the distant past or now today, because we have many sightings that are happening today. And although, however, this narrative is starting to change because the US government is finally admitting to the existence of valid sightings of UFOs that are beyond what we can explain. And the US government is one of the last governments in the world to actually admit this. So what would you say are the smoking guns, the biggest evidence that really shows they have been here? Would you say it's more in the literature or more in the archaeological evidence that's been left behind? Or what would you say are the biggest evidences?
It's the information which we have from the antique writers. I mean, I am familiar with books of Plato, Strabon, Plutarch, Herodotus, etc. Or Diodor of Sicily. He was a historian roughly around 2000 years ago, and he wrote 23 books of history. And he says, for example, in the beginning, life on Earth was different, and our ancestors, were like animals. We were fighting and looking for food with other animals. And then the heavens opened, the firmament opened, and the so-called gods came down. And the gods teach the humans in language. The humans before the visit of the gods had no language. The first language was the language of the gods. We still find this in the Bible with the Tower of Babel, where they said at that time, humanity had only one language. Later, when we separated all our cultures on the planet, we have developed different languages. But in the beginning, there was only one language. And Diodor of Sicily, one of the historians, says it was the God who made this present of language to us. Mm-hmm. And we have many other information from antique historians, especially from ancient India. There, the Mahabharata is much bigger than the Bible, by the way. They're composed of many, many books. And the fourth book of the Mahabharata, called the Mausala Purva, there Arjuna speaks exactly that he visited the gods in the sky. Of course, he does not use a word like spaceship. He has no word like spaceship at this time. He calls it, he visited the gods in a city of the heaven. And there were 3 cities in the heaven. And he described them. They had different colors and the different forms. They turned around its own axis. And Arjuna says, sometimes I wish to fall downwards to the planet Earth. If somebody wants to fall downwards, he's not here. And he continues, the place on which we stood always turned upside down. Once I saw the Earth up and the stars down, and then I saw the stars down, and the other ways around. Mm-hmm. Now, when you are in a mother spaceship in an orbit around the Earth, this mother spaceship will always circle around its own axis, because by doing so, you create by centrifugal force force of gravity, artificial force of gravity. But nobody from the Stone Age people could have known this. And he says, the holy place, the high place. Once it stood up and then it stood down. I saw the earth up, the earth down. Or another, just a short information. We all know Abraham, our old father of humanity. There is a text called the Abraham Apocryphic. And in this Abraham Apocryphic, Abraham speaks in the first person. And he writes, one evening, he was sitting outside in his garden, then two beings from the sky descended. And he clearly say, they did not have the breast of humans. So if somebody did not breathe like humans, he is not terrestrial. These two beings, by the way, they touch to him, they speak to him, and explain him where they came from. So we have many indications in the old holy writings.
Well, you've certainly done your research, and I'm sure you can run circles around any critic because you've done a lot of reading. And, you know, I've been familiar with some of the ancient Egyptian mythologies, for example, which also talk about, you know, this family of Ra, which look very extraterrestrial and are very likely extraterrestrial coming and helping to bring language and writing and teaching humanity, helping them move from being kind of primitive and tribal-like into civilized and having some form of a society. And, you know, and we can see very much like in the Aboriginal teachings and in the South American, you know, the Mayans and so forth, and Native American, you know, they all talk about their ancestors even being from the stars, and, you know, that they brought us much knowledge and so forth. So this would say that not only did these ancient travelers from other worlds come and help educate and maybe do a little bit of genetic modification, and there's evidence for that as well. And they helped to deliver some level of understanding to help us take a leap in human consciousness. And yet we made religions out of them.
Exactly. And you know, we have a problem. We all humans, generally spoken, on this planet, we have two sorts of human. One group is religious, the other group is scientifically. The religious group believes that God made everything, but as crown of creation, he created us, he made us. The scientific group is absolutely convinced it's all evolution, mutation, selection, and we are the top of evolution. Have you ever remarked that in both cases, religious, crown of creation, science, the top of evolution, in both cases, we look at ourselves as the greatest. We have a psychological problem. We don't want extraterrestrials. If they do exist, we are not the greatest anymore. So we have to learn to become humble, a little more humble.
Yes. So the arrogance of humans really shows up in this sense. And
exactly, yeah.
But it really changes the narrative. You know, when you look at a lot of world religions, this approach very much changes the narrative. So not only are the scientists threatened by the idea that we don't want extraterrestrials because we have to be the most intelligent species, and it scares us to think that there might be something beyond. I would imagine that the religious folks are also very threatened by this, this idea, because it completely topples this worldview that is built upon religious dogmas of various traditions. So how have you, experienced that kind of dynamic with people who are really rooted in their belief systems?
It's always a dangerous discussion. We always have to be very careful and very respectful with the other religions. Now, in our Christian religion, in the Western world, we would have no problem if of a sudden the scientific community would accept, yes, we are not alone, and maybe we were visited. We can accept this. We are used to it by movies like Star Wars, etc. But other religious societies, for example, the Muslim community will have big problems with this. So generally, I think if today science would say, yes, they are even here, the topic of UFOs, some people say we are under observation, we would have a problem. Humanity is not prepared for this. Maybe we get in panic. We will be afraid. What will they do with us? Will they enslave us? Will they steal our raw materials? So we are not prepared for this acceptance. So still we have to learn, I think, at least one generation.
I think some people are prepared and ready, but the masses, there's going to be upset. And clearly, we see right now with some of the disclosure that's happening with the U.S. government releasing these videos of these, basically UFOs. And yet the narrative that they're bringing it with is very much seen through the filters of the military, which is, well, we don't have control over it and it's invading our airspace. Therefore, it's a potential threat. And, the amount of the narrative that's coming through of it being a potential threat. And therefore, we have to now weaponize space and we've got the Space Force coming in and so forth. They're almost programming this expectation of it's going to be a potential threat and like an Independence Day scenario from the movies where they're going to invade and then enslave or whatever, versus maybe, like Arrival. In the movie Arrival, they came and tried to help in some way, but we had to get over our fear and our antagonistic reactions towards them. So would you say from your own, perspective, belief, that there is the threat, or that there is potentially benevolent, or that there is both?
No, they are benevolent, definitely. If they would like to kill us, to destroy us, they could have done it since thousands of years, anytime.
Exactly.
They would not have created us according their own image. And in my knowledge, that was done by a genetic mutation. So we are according their image. They could have killed us anytime, but they were teachers in the past. And when they return, they will teach us again. So we should not be afraid of them.
Right. So I love that because, we have so many challenges that we're facing currently in the world today. I mean, you can just talk about the environmental, we can talk about all of the wars, and, we've been on this sort of stalemate with nuclear war since the World War II, but it's like everyone is amping up again. And there's this potential threat of humans wiping each other out more so than any extraterrestrial race coming in and wiping out. And they could potentially bring us solutions that could help us really transform and take that leap in our world towards creating a better society and hopefully uniting humanity as one race versus warring against each other.
That's a very important point. Since humanity exists, we always have wars. Wars, whatever the reasons are, religious war, whatever. Soon as we have contact with extraterrestrials, we will realize that we all on this planet, if we are black or white or yellow or whatever, we all are the human society of this planet. Exactly. And it makes absolutely no sense to fight against each other. We have a bigger issue, a bigger future, contact with extraterrestrials, going out there, explore the universe, etc. So a contact with extraterrestrials would be very, very good for humanity.
Amen to that. Now, I want to bring in a quote that has been claimed to have said by Einstein. And I think it is a beautiful quote that really captures how we can reconcile this idea of ancient aliens with a cosmic source, an intelligent divine source that we could call a God. It says that the religion of the future will be a cosmic religion. It should transcend a personal God and avoid dogmas and theology, covering both the natural and the spiritual, the physical and the spiritual. It should be based on a religious sense or a sense of awe arising from the experience of all things, natural and spiritual, as a meaningful unity.
We'd now like you to enjoy a consciousness break with the talented artist Jaguar Twin.
I met a man who had a son, but he lost him to the world. He said my son was a singer, he wrote songs you never heard. He took his life, he gave it up before prophets ever turned. And said, I don't mean to linger, can I sing you just one verse? It goes, your soul is a star, it's alive. Your soul is a star, who am I to believe in? Your soul is a star, it's alive, I can see it. Ooh, do you know who you are? I met a girl who was a gun, kept a bullet in her jeans. She said Papa was a sinner, playing God behind the scenes. She wanted love, but she got fame and power from the thieves. There's always something bigger when the world ain't what it seems, you know. Your soul is a star, it's alive, I can see it. Your soul is a star, who am I to believe it? Your soul is a star, it's alive, I can see it. Ooh, you know who you are. Your soul is a star, it's alive, I can see it. Your soul is a star, who am I to believe it?
We have this potential and this maybe like a destiny or, this ability to take a leap to becoming galactic travelers ourselves, to becoming galactic humans. But first we need to figure out how are we going to create a sustainable and, peaceful coexistence here on Earth before they're going to really want us out there being a part of the galactic community and the universal community, right?
Oh, yes, I fully agree. But I hope this will happen sometime.
Well,
we will officially contact extraterrestrials, and then a new world for us humans opens.
Yeah. Yes. And I think that brings up a really good point, that there is this, in whether, we talk about, the world religions that you mentioned before and this promise of a return, or we even talk about it from the perspective of extraterrestrials coming and their promise of return and the hope. Right? The hope that someone from outside and beyond humanity is going to come in and save us from ourselves. Now, I believe that they can help us, but they're not going to rescue us until we're ready to also help ourselves, right? That they're ultimately here to empower, not enable, and that we humans have to be ready to take responsibility for the impact and the choices that we make in this world and the kind of society that we're creating. Because even if we go out there into the universe and we gain these new technologies, and we've currently got a lot of people, that space race is on again. What are we going to do and what are we going to create there if we just take the same mindset and the same problems and the same way of thinking about things and take it out into the world or into the greater universe?
I fully agree what you say. We have a lot of problems on this planet, and we humans, we have created these problems. We have created the mess we have, and we have to solve our problems by ourselves. We have to do it. No one from outer space will solve our problems. But what they can do is to give us advice. We can ask them, in your evolution, even if it's 5,000 years old, and how have you solved at your time that problem? And they can give advice. They can tell us that's the way you should do it, or you could do it. If we do it, that's then still up to us humans.
Well, and then we have to be in a position of readiness to actually receive that advice and recognize that there are other beings who have wisdom that we can gain, that greater insight from. And yet we have to let go of the arrogance. As you said before, we have to humble ourselves to be able to really receive that wisdom and say, okay, these guys know what they're talking about. They have experience and technology and wisdom beyond us, but ultimately we are the ones who have to learn how to implement this and be open to receiving it versus thinking we know better. Or maybe like what we're facing right now, the world is really in a lot of flux and transformation, and yet it's there's people who cling to the old paradigm because it's what's familiar, it's what gave them a sense of control and so forth. And they cling to that and they fight to keep that alive. And yet it's falling apart all around us. But there are those who are awakening and ready to shift into a new way. But then there are those who fight that transformation. And so, what do you think we need to get to? What point does humanity need to get to be ready to really make this leap so that we are then ready to even receive the help of other wise beings?
Have you ever read or heard about the zoo hypothesis? There is a hypothesis, it comes from American professor James Theodorf. He's dead in the meantime, he was an astrophysician, and he said, there is a hypothesis which we call the Jew hypothesis. Extraterrestrials look to us humans like in a zoological garden. In a zoological garden, there are different forms of life. Now, there are rules for the visitors and rules for the guardians. The guardians have their rules and the visitors have their rules. And the guardians have to observe that the visitors keep the rules. Now, the guardians observe that obviously among these many, many forms of life, there is one form of life which creates a culture, which creates songs, which creates paintings, etc. So they realize sooner or later they will be able to leave the zoological garden. They will leave their planet. Should we permit them to leave the planet or not? And the idea was they permit it only if we are ready for it. Means ready, peaceful. We do not go out there to fight against other. We go not out there just to win new planets for ourselves and to fight against the others again, like we did it on planet Earth with our territories. So soon as we are ready, peaceful contact with every form of life out there, then we are ready to leave the zoological garden and not before.
Now that leads us to another topic, which is how can we humans get to that point where we really are ready to expand, to make that leap in consciousness and to move beyond just a Earth-like way of being and into being galactic humans or into becoming a part of being citizens of the galaxy and traveling through space. As Erich is saying, we have to create a big shift. We have to be ready to do so. So what are those things that are going to make us ready? What is that shift in consciousness that we want to accomplish here? Now, I like if we can go back to that quote from Einstein, there's something where it is a sense of unity, a meaningful unity that is inspired within us at a spiritual level. And so when we can shift into a consciousness that's focused on separation and judgment and negativity and all of the things that tear humans apart and build walls between us, when we can start to take down those walls, recognize our commonality, that we are all a part of the human race, that we are actually all one, and we share this planet together. We share more in common than we do differences. And when we can transcend those dogmas and those things that separate and come into a greater wholeness and acceptance and unity, and yet even within that unity, we recognize there is room for diversity and individuality and unique expressions of people. This is what unity consciousness really is. And when it comes to how do we achieve that unity consciousness, one of the big things that we really need to do is to set the ego aside. And so this is something that we've talked about here, is humbling our ego. And when we can humble the ego, a part of that means just empty it, quiet the mind. The ego really works through our mind a lot. So one of the keys is quieting the mind. And this is where practices like meditation really come in, but not just any meditation. Quieting the mind and coming to unity consciousness, or another way maybe of putting it is to shift from sort of this lower consciousness to a higher consciousness. Or one of the things I like to talk about is a quantum consciousness. And when we look at quantum consciousness, we can find that there are some keys revealed to us for how we make that leap. Just like making a quantum leap, like an electron makes a quantum leap in an atom, we need to make a quantum leap in our consciousness and the way we think in order to create a whole new world. And when we look at the quantum, when the electron makes that leap, it goes from one state of being or an orbit to a higher, an excited being, a higher energy state. And in between it doesn't just, you can't watch the electron leap from here to there. It actually disappears in between and then it reappears in that new state. This is what a quantum leap means. So it goes into this place where it is, they actually call it the forbidden zone, or we could say it goes into the quantum realm, into the gap, where there's all of a sudden there's this simultaneous infinite possibilities, and they are all simultaneously there in what we call a superposition. And when it comes out, it could come out anywhere. So we don't really know. There's an uncertainty of where it's going to land. And yet it requires energy, a coherent energy to come in and help make that leap. But in that gap, in that forbidden zone, that is where it goes into a place of almost nothingness. Right? We have to go into the nothingness, or what we could call the 0 point, the null point. We have to go into that nothingness in order to then access the allness, the infinite possibilities. And so we as a human race, to really make this leap in consciousness, we need to hit that 0 point as well. We need to go into that place of complete nothingness, emptiness. Just let it all go. Let go of the identities, let go of the attachments, let go of thinking you know how things are. Just let it all go. Empty your mind. Find stillness. Find the quiet pond, the emptiness, the still point. And when we can get to that place, that then flows into creating a coherent state of being within the wholeness of our being, where our spiritual self, our mind, our soul, our physical body, all of it is coming into coherence and alignment. So when we can do that individually, that's going to happen through our dedication to a practice, so that we can really truly make a leap in our own individual consciousness. And then when enough people do that collectively, and we reach a critical mass, that is when we as a human race will be able to make that shift, where more of the masses, it doesn't really take a lot to reach critical mass, maybe 3% of the population, coming into that coherent state, coming into a more of a unity consciousness, more of a quantum conscious way of being. And when we start to live that on a more regular basis, that 3% will be the tipping point that is needed to create the snowball effect, the avalanche of the masses being able to spontaneously wake up and also make that leap of awakening to join us. And then that is when we will know we are ready. That is when we will be able to move beyond the level of thinking that has created the problems of this earth. And then we will really be ready to start taking our place as galactic citizens. There's also these people who take the viewpoint that when certain extraterrestrial races came to the planet and maybe did some genetic engineering, there's two viewpoints on this. One is that they came to help us evolve and take a leap. Others say they came, have the theory or conspiracy that they came to enslave us and make us become their slaves. So what's your perspective on this?
Definitely not enslavers, because I know my friend Zachariah Sitchin, he has come up in his book with this idea of enslavers. I don't think so. In the past time, they were definitely teacher. They teach human. They learned us not to enslave us, and they could have misled us all the time. They could have stolen our raw material in our solar system at any time, or they could have punished us at any time. They did not. No, we have to grow up to become open for the universe.
Yeah, they wouldn't have needed humans to get these resources if that was what they wanted. They would have had the technology to get it themselves, right? I want to just ask, with you've certainly left a legacy, and you've inspired many generations with your work. And I guess one question is, what would you most like to be remembered for? And what would be your sort of major message, that final message that you'd like to offer people for shifting human consciousness?
I have no idea if humanity of the future will remember me or not. Of course, you would be honored, but you are dead, so it doesn't matter. what the future brings. But the legacy is definitely, we have been visited by beings from outer space. These visitors created us by a genetical mutation from the family tree of the apes in their own image. It is our duty to become technological wise, to construct spaceships again, and then to spread out the intelligent form of life in the whole universe.
Great, wonderful. And also, the idea that not only do we have this, this connection with the extraterrestrials and they're coming again and they're here to help, but it doesn't negate the idea that there is, or the essence of the universe, that there is a spiritual essence behind it. It may not be this anthropomorphized God that needs to travel in some vehicle like we see in our religious texts, but that does not negate that there is an intelligence behind the universe.
We don't know how the universe started. Religion says in the beginning there was God. Okay, what created God? Science says now in the beginning there was the Big Bang. What created the Big Bang, the first atom? So in fact, be it science or be it religion, we have no idea how it started. But the fact is that it did start. We are here. We are there. So in every respect with religion, we have to accept there is something out there which we call a spirit. Religions call it God. I call it the grand spirit of the universe. There is something in every respect. And I am one of these figures who pray every day. And I say this as an 87-year-old man. I pray to the spirit of the universe. And I thank the spirit of the universe for our existence.
Amen to that. That is a wonderful place to complete. Erich, I want to thank you so much for being my guest on Quantum Minds TV. And I would love to have you back at some point if we can, because you have such a wealth of knowledge and experience and a lifetime to share with people. So thank you again. And
it was a pleasure to talk to you. You are a very, very, very intelligent scientific figure. It's a pleasure to talk to you. Enjoy your life. Bye-bye.
Okay. Well, we hope that you have taken some golden nuggets from this thought-provoking session, and very much it was a mind-expanding and very stimulating discussion. But most importantly, I hope that you will take this knowledge gained and really put it into application in your life so that you can receive the full benefits from it. Now, as always, thank you for tuning in to Quantum Minds TV. And if you enjoyed it, please do rate, review, and subscribe to us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and or Spotify. And if you would like to be the first to get full access to each conscious conversation as soon as it becomes available, you can register at quantummindstv.com with your name and email. Until next time, I'm Dr. Theresa Bullard-Whyke, and this is Quantum Minds TV.
This conscious conversation was created, produced, and recorded by Dr. Theresa Bullard-Whyke in collaboration with Erich von Däniken and edited by Verse Content and HH Films and Photo. The theme music was created by Tim Mountain of Even Load Productions. Quantum Minds TV is a product of the Quantum Learning Academy.